Hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. My name is Taylor Hammond, and I'm the lead account manager for the ABC Kids Expo. ABC is happy to once again partner with Jefferson Davis. Through his partnership, we're able to offer live webinars as well as the Exhibitor Success and ROI Center. Please be sure to visit this page on our website for helpful articles, past webinars, as well as registration links for the webinar in August. Today's webinar, How to Make Your ABC Kids Expo Exhibit Stand Out from the Crowd, will be presented by Jefferson Davis. Jefferson has been in the exhibition industry for many years. During that time, he's been a consultant, trainer, speaker, educator, and author. With personally exhibiting at over 200 trade shows, Jefferson has developed practical and workable processes to address critical exhibiting facts. Thank you for tuning in today, and we hope that you find today's webinar useful to your trade show experience.
All right. Thank you, Heather. And again, thanks to everybody who has logged in today. It's pretty cool to be working with a great team like Taylor, Larry, everybody at the ABC who cares enough about us as exhibitors to provide, not just rent us real estate, concrete, but also show us how to make it successful and profitable. I don't know about all of you listening, but I've been involved in about 200 shows over my career, and the only time I felt like I ever heard from the show organizer was when they wanted a check, and they wanted to send me that service kit telling me all that stuff I had to do and I didn't want to do. So it's really cool to be working with ABC because they care about us as exhibitors, and they want to make sure that we're getting real value. So today's webinar is one of the pieces of the puzzle that really makes your trade show program work. So we're going to take a look at this, how to really stand out from your exhibit through the eyes of a stranger and begin to apply some ideas to make your exhibit stand out from the crowd. Okay, so before we start, I want to kind of move into the idea of growing your business. And Peter Drucker is one of America's foremost business gurus. And Mr. Drucker said something years back that really brought it home. He said, if you want to grow your business, there's really only two things that drive revenue for a business. And number one is marketing. And number two is innovation. He said everything else in business is an expense. So what we want to focus on, not just in this webinar, but through the entire Exhibitor Success and ROI Center and all the programs we're doing, is how to improve your marketing and how to bring some innovation into your marketing so you can grow your business. Now, I'm going to give you a warning here as we get started. We're going to cover a lot of ground fast, and I'm going to show you a lot of photographs. And my concern here is that you think about innovation usually comes from outside of your industry. Chances are you're doing plus or minus 10% what everybody else in your industry is doing. And usually to find innovative ideas, we often need to look outside of our industries. So I'm going to show you visual pictures and give you a lot of commentary here today of exhibits of all sizes, of all types, in all types of industries. And what I don't want you to do is look at these ideas and go, oh, I could never do that. Or, boy, the kind of money it would take to do that isn't possible. A lot of these ideas are scalable, meaning they can be scaled down and executed, from a small, medium, or large. And as I show you these visuals and these pictures, I'm going to try to get behind the idea. And that's what I want you to think about, is the idea that is being executed here, and then how could you adapt and apply the idea to take your exhibit to the next level. Because one of the programs my company does is called Exhibiting Effectiveness Evaluation. And over the last 5 years, we have stood in front of almost 18,000 booths in action and putting them through an evaluation. So we've kind of seen a lot. I don't think we've seen it all, because as soon as we think we've seen it all, it keeps changing. So again, remember, innovation comes from outside your industry. As you see these ideas, don't immediately flinch and go, boy, that seems like it costs way too much money to do. But ask yourself, what's the idea behind how they're doing that, and how might I be able to scale that idea for my specific situation? And remember, be sure to submit questions during today's webinar. And also, you can reach us through the Exhibitor Success and ROI Center, and you can submit questions there. So let's get started here. I think the natural place to start is for us to step back and stand outside and really look at this thing we call a trade show, and look at the reasons why people really attend shows. And it really comes down to 3 specific reasons. Number 1, shopping. They're looking sourcing, purchasing, and also looking to revalidate existing buying relationships. So make sure that every show you do, that you always reach out to your existing customers and let them know you're going to be there. Give them a reason to come see you. Sometimes exhibitors will tell me, they'll go, Jefferson, I don't want to invite my customers to shows. And I go, why not? They go, well, all my competitors are going to be there. And what you don't want to have happen is one of your customers show up at a show as a result of an invitation from a competitor, and you really did nothing to acknowledge. Remember, they're using shows to revalidate buying relationships too, and obviously find new products and so forth. Number 2 is learning. They come to trade shows to learn. Now, obviously, there's educational sessions going on, and some shows will have credits where you can get, crediting toward this or that designation, and sometimes even college credits. But the learning can come from you, too. You see, you're the subject matter expert in your product, or you should be. And what retailers are looking for when they come to a show is not just specific information on your specific product, but information about the category and how to merchandise it and how to get higher turn, faster turn on the shelves, and how to increase the sale amount. So look at your exhibit and think about what can we teach a retailer about merchandising and raising sales within the category that you're in. And the 3rd reason they come is networking. It's the gathering of the kids' product tribe. Okay, so they're coming to network with their peers and their colleagues and key opinion leaders and you, the supplier. So what we realize here is that it's not just one reason why people come to shows. It's a blend of these 3 reasons: shopping, learning, and networking. And so I think it's important for all of us as exhibitors to kind of step back and ask, how well is my exhibit serving these multiple needs, and kind of score it on a 1 to 5. And then if you score it high, then you want to ask, what specifically am I doing in my exhibit to meet these needs? And if you'll sit down and think about these, you'll probably see that there are some ways for you to add more value to your exhibit experience and make it a destination, a worthy destination, as we'll talk about. So here's another big idea. When the buyer goes to a trade show, they're really in a world of overchoice, hundreds and hundreds of exhibits and educational sessions and friends and colleagues and peers at the show, and they're trying to figure out, where do I place my attention? Where do I spend my time while I'm there? How do I get the most from my time at this show? And they're not just stopping at every booth, right? It's not really possible, especially in larger shows. And so they're more selective about which exhibits they visit. So a great phrase that I want to pass on to you, and I want you to either write it down or circle it in your workbook, is a worthy destination. What a cool way to think about your booth, as a destination in that hall amongst those hundreds and hundreds of exhibitors. And is my exhibit worthy of the attendees' time? And what am I doing besides just bringing my products and putting them in there? And how do I make that destination worthy of their time? Because they're not going to visit every exhibit, and they're not going to be able to process every exhibit. So there are some things that we got to do to make that happen. Now, exhibit surveys they're like the research scientists of the trade show industry. They've been researching exhibiting since 1963. And every year they're doing hundreds and hundreds of studies and surveys. And they did one to try to figure out what is most important to a buyer and attendee when they're on the show floor. And the first thing was the overall booth appearance. Your booth is very similar to a retail store. And when you think about a retailer, right, they don't like window shoppers. They don't want people just passing by in the mall, right, glance in the window and pass on by. And so they want to have a quality storefront and a quality window display and a inviting store. And it's the same way you got to think about your booth, right? Window shoppers don't spend money, okay? So the overall appearance of your booth also, they make judgments about your company and the quality of your products based on the overall appearance of your booth. They make judgments, and they make quick judgments. So you got to make sure that the appearance of your booth, if you've got a quality product, make sure you're carrying quality all the way through your exhibit, okay? The second thing that's important to them is the information they receive as a result of visiting the booth, the quality of that information. And again, I think the area for innovation in retail, and I'm seeing it in some other shows that we've been working with for years, is us exhibitors doing a better job of not just educating them on our products, but educating them on how to grow the category within their store. Okay, so the quality of information they receive, they walk away with. And then number 3 is relevance to their business. The time that they spent with you, that they get something that is relevant to their business. So these are the 3 things, according to the research, that are most important to attendees about their visit to a booth: the overall appearance, the quality of information they get during this stop, and the relevance of that information to their business. So let's talk about this destination and how would we go about thinking of our exhibit, and what are some things that our exhibit has to do if it's going to be a worthy destination. Well, number 1, it's got to get seen. It's got to get noticed. Sometimes we think just because we show up and we set up our booth that everybody passes actually looks at it, 1, and 2, processes it. By processing, it means that they actually give some thought. What is it, and do I care? The reality is they don't see every booth they passed. So your first job, if there's one thing you've got to do, is it's whatever it takes to get your booth seen and noticed. Because if they don't see it, they can't process it, okay? Number 2, it's got to quickly and visually communicate what you do. It's got to be blatantly obvious, and it's got to deliver some form of a value proposition. So once somebody looks at a booth, then the 2 questions that flash in their mind automatically are, what do you do, and why should I care? You've got to give special emphasis onto this, why should I care, this value proposition, okay? And number 3, it's got to be approachable, right? You can't have too many people, too few people. It's got to be easy to enter. Remember, window shoppers don't buy. They look and they pass. So it's got to be easy to get into, and it's got to be easy to move around, and it's got to be easy to exit. Excuse me. Number 4, there's got to be brief. Time is the enemy at a show. So there's got to be brief but meaningful interaction, interactivity, something to do in the booth. Not just statically look at a product setting there, but something to do. Finally, they should walk away from that knowing something they didn't know that is valuable and useful to them. And if your exhibit does these 5 things, you're going to get a lot of traffic. But if it doesn't do all 5 of these, it's going to limit the amount of traffic you get at trade shows. So it's, let's what can we do to kind of make sure these 5 things are happening so our booth is seen as a worthy destination, okay? So some of you with me today may be providing services. Maybe you don't exhibit with a physical product. And when you do services, it requires more thought, more creativity. You got to really kind of step back and put more mental horsepower into the design and the messaging and the experience. And you can do it, but it just takes more effort. So what I suggest is that if you provide services, not a physical product, that you think about problems you can solve for the retailer, opportunities that you can create for them, areas where you can save them time and money, efficiencies that you can create, and improvements that you can deliver for their business. And then there's different strategies you can use to kind of level the playing field with companies selling products. Like presentations, it might be like one-to-one or what we call one-to-many, where you're doing small group presentations. And maybe it's the 3 biggest challenges in growing this category or that category, 3 ways to reduce or eliminate shoplifting, right? And you know, so like that, think about presentations. Gamification is hot. I'm going to show you some gaming ideas, how exhibitors are integrating gaming into the booth. But, you know, take the retail insurance 60-second challenge. Take the employee management challenge, and using things like tablets, iPads and Surfaces and things like that, and having how many of these questions can you get right in 60 seconds? It's fast, right? Gamification, another strategy. And often, you know, for a service business, we need something physical to do, so props, you know, can play a role. For example, when I exhibit, right, I market services. So one of my themes is success is measured by the companies you keep. How do you measure up? So what do you think I use as a prop in my booth? A tape measure with a calculator that I physically give to the attendee. I ask them 2 questions, have them calculate one big number that sets the need. So I'm using a prop to hook and engage. White papers, industry intelligence reports, checklists, you know, they love this kind of stuff. Case studies, you know, we were working with this client and they were having this problem or that problem, and here's the approach that we applied, and here's the result they got. Okay, and so these are all ways, and visual testimonials, both in graphics and audio visual. Maybe it's short video clips, 60, 90-second video clips with clients. So for those of you, if you provide a service, some ideas, you got to think a little bit harder, but you definitely can do it. Okay, so let's talk about visibility. Let's talk about getting seen here. Here are 6 things you can do to make your exhibit more visible. Number 1, light it up. Number 2, use strong and relevant imagery. Number 3, the messaging. Every exhibit should tell a story visually. You should be able to look at that exhibit and there's some questions in the mind of the attendee that you got to answer. Okay, and then creative use of audio visual, whether it is tablets or small flat panels or interactive touch screens, things like that, interactivity through audio visual. And then physical demonstration presentations. Jot this down. The number 1 way, there was research done last year by the Center for Exhibition Industry Research. The number 1 way that attendees want to engage with exhibits on a show floor is through demonstrations and presentations. So interactivity engagement. They want to do more than they can do on your website. Okay, so you've got to make sure that you don't have a static booth with nothing to do. And then finally, a proactive booth staff, having people that look and act like they want to be there, stand, smile, greet people as they get near your booth. These are all ways to make your exhibit more visible. You know, I could really say, I could give you an effective exhibit in like a few words. Here it is. Look, what, why, who, do. Write those words down. Look, what, why, who, and do. Make me look. Quickly, let me make sure I understand exactly what you do. Give me a reason why I should stop and engage. Communicate who you are, and give me something quick, interactive, fun, novel, educational based to do in your booth. That's the key to an effective exhibit. So let's get into some visual examples here again, and let me come back and say, I'm going to show you all sizes, all types, and all different industries, and I am going to take you outside of your industry. I'll show you some examples, I think, from within, but I'm also going to take you outside. because that's where I think your innovation is going to come from. Not doing what everybody else in your sector's now doing, but doing something different. So the fastest way to grab attention is people are like bugs. They're attracted to light. If there's one thing you can do to make your exhibits stand out, light it up. So in this example, whether you're building backlighting into your actual exhibit property, or whether you've got a property and you've got an area of it, like in the Stone Armory, you can see how they've got these little recesses, almost like a store, right? It's laid out like a store, and they've got lighting in there. Or maybe it's just really weird lighting that's just different, and you look at it just because it's so unique, the lighting, like this example. Or maybe it's just using a really colorful exhibit backdrop and having good down lighting that's making the colors really pop out because of the lighting, like this example. Or maybe it's getting really slick and designing a 3D type build with your exhibit. This Prevco example, they sell these subsea housings, and it's three-dimensional, and the ocean color is blue, right? And that lighting and that color is it's just visually stunning. Or maybe it's surrounding your product, your display in lighting. This is a cool example I saw at a show where they've got a new product set in here, and you see those 2 yellow arrows? If you'll look close, you'll see that there are 4 more arrows, and those would gradually light up, and it made it look as if these lights were like a hologram. They were in the air, and they were forcing your eyes to their new product. So here's the first major question of the day for you. Are you lighting up your booth, yes or no? And if so, how are you using lighting to draw attention, to create drama, to spotlight? If you're not using lighting and you're not getting enough traffic in your booth, I'll tell you, one of the fastest things you can do is light it up, okay? Next, imagery. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And at a trade show, less is more. Okay, so pictures. So you can use colorful imagery on your backdrop, like this example from the ABC show. Here's a picture really getting right to the heart of the matter, showing the product, showing the application, using the right color coding, everything. This is seat belts for school buses, right? Look at that. It's got the big belt right there, and that's got the picture of the children, which we'll talk about people in a moment here. And then it's got a physical demo right on the perimeter, along with AV showing some pretty interesting stuff on the AV. Cartoons with text bubbles are becoming really popular. We're seeing this trend a lot more on trade show floors today, you know, where we've got this picture and we've got this text bubble that's kind of telling a story. A large singular image. This is they're against the back wall, so they were able to do an oversized backdrop rather than just the 8 feet. This one's like 14 feet. This big, colorful, singular image. We print fabric, right? You know exactly what this company does. Sometimes it's getting a little out of the box with your imagery. In this example, the company sells insurance, and they know that one of the inherent problems in insurance is all of the technicalities of it, and a lot of people are actually a little bit fearful about insurance. So they're using this fear-based idea with that hockey mask and insurance on it, kind of unique, creepy, different, out of the box, right? It stands out. It doesn't look. You don't want your exhibit to look like everybody else's. Otherwise, they're going to go numb after about an hour in the show. And sometimes it's building imagery into it, and this one is both imagery of the product and unique build and lighting. A combination. So a picture's worth 1,000 words. So the question is, what pictures are you currently using in your booth, and how are you using them, and how might you improve the imagery to better deliver a message? Now here's another little trick about pictures that retailers have known for a long, long time. If you put a photograph of a person with the image, more people will look at it. See this example. You've got the 2 people's faces right there, and they're well lit, and their headline, their value proposition is right there at perfect eye level. 85% patients want more communication from you. Here's an example where they've got instruments and they're placing an image of a person, their face right there, and the focal point is what? The face, but now it's surrounded by all the images. And here's an example of a small booth who's using somewhat of a provocative type image, right? But also very colorful, all the way down to the flooring. Look at that booth. So how are you using pictures? How could you use them better? I will give you a few pointers on pictures. Less is more. Don't do too many. If you're in a small booth and you got a 10 by 10 with a backdrop and you think you're going to put like 20 pictures on that backdrop, they're going to go numb to that. They're not going to notice. I would rather have one or two large images than I would a bunch of little ones. Bigger is better, okay? Messaging. Remember we said the exhibit has to very quickly communicate what you do and why they should care. This first example on the screen is a bullseye shot. Structured transcription is the product. Populate your EHR. I got it, right? I know exactly what is going on here. They're not making me guess. They're not making me work. They're not going to work at a show. They're just going to pass right by. Populate your EHR, structured transcription. Look at this one. 4 words delivers the story. Reviews matter. Get some. I got it. In one step, I can totally process that booth. Wow, we don't really have any way to get reviews on our store. I need to stop at this booth and learn. Look at this one. Dangle a problem that is relevant to the retailer. In this example, appointment gaps. Now notice the color they're using for the appointment gap background too, red, right? So color has power too. We could do a whole session on color. So appointment gaps. Here's another one. Time is money. Value proposition. So we're talking about your value proposition here. Okay, what do you do and why should I care? Oh, you do strollers? There's about 50 other companies that do those. So what's your value prop? What is it that you want me to know? You know, what makes yours different, better, right? Look at this one. This is a problem-based approach. High water bills, DEP violations. Notice the image of the person looking down at a bill with shock on their face. That's good storytelling. That's visual storytelling. Here's another one of a product, right, where they've got the product here and they're really featuring the attributes of the product. Get your notes in order, right? There's a picture of the product, there's the head, there's the value prop, there's the 3 bullets. Great storytelling. So I want you to stand off from your exhibit when you leave this webinar. I want you to get a photograph, or I want you to set up your booth, and I want you to stand off and look at all these things. Lighting, imagery with people in it, clear, informative, quick read messaging. Is it working? Is it firing on all cylinders? If it's not, make some changes, and it'll make a big difference in your results. Audio visual. Now, some of you are going, Jefferson, this AV stuff gets expensive, and I don't know if I can. Well, there's so many ways to do it. Here's an example, a larger example of using projection, right, on a unique shaped surface. You know, it's one thing to have flat panel in the booth, but it's another thing to be using unique shapes for your AV. This one is rear projecting onto like a lens. Notice what's going on, too. It's Meet Dr. Jackson. There's an arrow. That arrow goes up and down. It's pushing you to do what? Engage in a demo. Here's an example of a well-placed flat panel that is using infographics to educate the retailer about why they should be carrying this product, you know, some industry statistics, educational. This example here, I just saw this at a show I was at. Notice the top of this booth. So they've got this product over here. It's this toy thing. And they've got rear projected imagery of demoing the product. And they actually had a 10 by 20 booth with 4, those projectors are very small today. And I tell you what blew me away about this booth, they didn't even have electricity. They did not have electricity. They had those little, tiny little handheld LCD projectors, rear projected, demoing the product. And at night, they would take them home, charge them, and bring them back. They didn't even have electricity, and they still had AV, right? And so here's an example of using a LED type panel to communicate questions, hooks, things that will grab the attention of the attendee. So a lot of ways to use AV. A couple more examples. This is one of my favorites here. Rear projection of these eyes. As you walk near the booth, they would slowly blink and open. And when they were open, you notice in the pupil of the eye, there's spots. And so when it would close and open, the spots were gone. What they were doing was saying, hey, corneal dystrophy is a problem. We got a solution here, and they were using really oversized, very unique AV. This is a trend I'm seeing that is working extremely well, the ability to connect multiple flat panels together and then use different colors and messaging and feature different products and branding and video. If you were to walk by this booth, they probably had 4 different products that were moving, and they were using motion, color, imagery, and copy. Here's another creative example where a small booth put iPads into the back wall that were independent, see all those little eyeballs? And there would be points where all those iPads would sync up and there would be one large image. Audio, visual, AV. Are you using it? If so, how? And how could you integrate? A lot of you will have products in the booth setting there, and it'll be static, and maybe just placing like an iPad on a stand near the product, like a product exploration app that allows the visitor to go in and interact and learn what they want to learn about the product, right? So audio visual. Something to do in the booth, okay? This example here is a photo. People love pictures of themselves, so all they're doing is they've got this backdrop in here, and they've got this photo booth. You can walk in, snap a photo. It's got the Henry Schein branding on it. Dare to compare. This was one of my favorites. Now, again, this is a demo example. And so they had these booths here where you could put the mask on and go into this booth and it would fill with smoke. This was at a firefighters convention. Again, think about the idea here. Don't get caught up whether it's fire or dental or whatever. Think about what are they doing here, right, to be unique. Well, this is a hands-on demonstration showing the superiority of their product. Okay, here's gamification, a company using Plinko. Now, you've all seen Plinko, these little plastic, 2 foot by 3 foot little plastic things. I see them all the time. Well, this company took Plinko to a whole new level and had a giant oversized data Plinko perfectly telling their product story through a gamification. With mesh, each hop is a stop. So the visitor walked up to the booth, they would pick a number, the lady up top would drop the visitor's number down one side and the FlexNet number down the other. They would instantly tell their story. Something fun, educational. They walk out of that booth knowing something they did not know when they walked in. So this would be a good time here to collect ourselves. We've talked about some ways to make your exhibit, get it seen through lighting, through imagery with people, something to do in the booth, integration of AV. I'm going to take a look at the question queue, and for the sake of time, I'm going to come back around and then answer questions. So now's a good time. Take a moment and say, hey, boy, if there were one question I could ask in this webinar today, answer something for me, what would that be? Type it in, and then I'll come back around on the back end of this and get it. Okay. Ease of access and navigation. Okay, in a small booth, those of you with me in a 10 by 10 booth today, the worst mistake you can make is cram a bunch of product in that booth, throw a table across the front of it, and leave the visitor in the aisles. Okay, so make sure there's no barriers to getting into or getting out of. Those of you with multiple products, make sure it's crystal clear of what is where. Group things. If you have multiple products, here's the pecking order. Lead with new, and make sure you've got signage saying new products. Augment with hot, trending, best sellers, and make sure you have signage. Here's new, here's our best sellers. And then your bread and butter products, your pillar products that you want to reinforce. New, best sellers, bread and butter, leave everything else at home. And make sure when the visitor looks with all the stuff in the booth that they can tell what is where. And consider where you place things, too, in terms of near the aisle and how things work together. And zones for medium or larger booths today, the trend in designing your footprint with zones in mind. The perimeter of the booth is a meet and greet. Then you've got an area where you can send information seekers. And then you've got these interactive areas where the demos are happening. And then you've got your order writing or your deeper conversation areas, and even space for people to relax and recharge in the booth is another big trend that's making a huge difference. What you don't want to do is have a booth like this one. Look, a wrinkled banner on the back, table across the front, big candy bowl there, and nobody in the booth. You also don't want to do stuff like this. fence them in. Look at this booth. It's got a wooden fence around it, right? How would you even get out of that booth? There's a small entryway. People don't like to feel like they're going to walk in and get trapped in a space. And this booth is making about every mistake you can imagine in terms of having this circular counter and having about 8 booth staffers all wearing blue shirts, every one of them with their backs to the aisle. So these are the types of barriers, both physical and staffing barriers, that can limit traffic to and through your booth. Another thing, remember we said if you have multiple products, make sure that they can quickly tell what's where. Notice on the left side, this company does instruments, and notice how they've got these cool headers around it. It's a circular type booth, and they've got it well marked. Look, scissors, needle holders, forceps, hooks, very well labeled. Notice on the right side, Alex over here, who's using color coding and right above eye level signage to what is where in the booth. If you have a medium or large booth, you should be paying attention to this, okay? Now, let's talk about how to get interactivity in the booth, meaningful interactive experience. Here's 6 different strategies. One of them is one-to-one, you talking to one person and personalizing the demonstration. The other way is the hands-on. Remember, the number one way they want to engage is hands-on. One-to-many, where maybe you're presenting to small groups of people, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10. Recreating environments, gamification, and self-guided type demonstrations. This is probably, again, this is a big example, but if you'll get behind what's going on here and think about for your situation, you might be able to scale this idea. This was called, speaking to retailers. This is Coke. Coke could go out and say, hey, sell Coke, it makes money, right? No, what do? Unlocking profits. So they realize they're not selling a product, they're selling profits. What do retailers really care about? Think about retailers. What do they care about? I think it comes down to this. Does your product or service fit my merchandising mix, number 1? Number 2, will it sell? Number 3, what do you do to help me sell it? And number 4, can I make money on this? Okay? So does it fit my mix? Will it sell? What do you do to help me sell? And will I make money on it? Will it turn and will I make money? So Coke was brilliant and created the Customize Your Cold Vault, where they had this video recreation of a cold vault. They had an interactive touchscreen, and they were teaching the retailer in minutes on how to set up their cold vault for maximum profits. Brilliant. Hands-on demonstrations in the booth. This was a show I was just at. They sell the Speed Stack game. They could have just said, hey, sell Speed Stack, it makes money. But they had a demo, and they had a kid in the booth that was competing against the attendees. How fast can you stack? And the kid was winning all the time. But it was very hands-on. It was very fun, right? Here's another example of a hands-on. They've got this product. They're trying to show how lightweight it is to use, so they're having the booth staff with their toes flip it over. Okay, here's another one. Cleans the water so you can, hey, you want to talk about a value proposition? Look at that. Cleans the water so you can clean the floors. What do they have there? A demonstration where they've got flooring, they've got the product in the booth. Here's an example of a guy who's selling these chairs now for offices instead of sitting on a chair that actually engages more of your core. And what's he doing? He's demonstrating the product and he's getting attendees to interact with it. Find a way to get them to interact. One-to-many presentations, these are typically theater types. Now, obviously, in a medium or large booth, you can draw a crowd and do some amazing stuff with one-to-manys. But even in a small booth, you can do this. Some of you are saying, hey, Jefferson, I got a little inline. I can't do that. Yeah, you can. Look at this one. Here's a small booth. This is a 10 by 20 booth with a little flat panel. It's got 9 little stools there, and once an hour, they're running a quick 5-minute presentation on how to make sure your data is secure. And if you do it right, you can have people lined up around the block to set in your quick presentation on how to do this or that, how to avoid this or that. Recreating environments is another hot trend. The retailer really wants to see how will your product be merchandised at the point of sale in their store. So on the left, you see an example where the company is giving away, look at this, get this display free for your store, and what do they have? The POS that'll be in the store. Now the retailer can visualize exactly how much space it takes and what it'll look like in the store, what you do to help them sell it. This example on the right, the environment of a workplace and showing where germs happen in the workplace, education, right? And this one was a great one here. This company sells, notice, it's like a tailgate thing that goes on your rear windshield wiper. They could have just had it in there on the rack like they do, but they had the cutout of the back and they had it working. And so the wiper blade was moving back and forth. The product was being demonstrated. Here's another example of a prove your claim environment where they have a roofing compound comparing it to traditionals with a heat lamp and a digital thermometer inside the middle showing what? The superiority of the product. So recreating environments, presentation, demonstrations. Gamification, super hot. On the left, what's your germ personality? On the right, take the color match challenge with a leaderboard. In the middle, elevate, discover category growth, the snack swap challenge, a touchscreen. There were 9 products on the screen. The retailer's job was to pick 3 that they thought were the lowest movers and replace them with 3 they thought would raise the category. These are all examples of gamification, testing people's knowledge in quick, fun, interactive, novel ways. Self-guided. Sometimes, you know, the best thing, you've got an area in your booth where the visitor can go and interact with your products and their content on their own without even having to engage a staffer. So here's an example of how you might use your points of differentiation by putting signage physically on the product, pointing out what the value proposition, what makes it different. Here's an example of putting a flat panel on a wall and syncing it up with tablets and having the visitor interact. You got a lot of products. Here's an example of a touch screen where you could have them look at any part of your line they want to. Here's an example of using tablets again for access to information. So self-guided demonstration, using technology to support information. Okay. Another factor, a comfortable booth, they'll hang out longer. So what are some ways you can improve the comfort factor? Flooring. Have you ever walked in a booth that just had this amazing carpet and this super soft pad? I'll bet you spent more time in that booth. Really good strategy. Carpet and thick padding underneath. Space, not too much stuff in there, not cramped, not overcrowded, right? Accessibility, we talked about that. Not just the ease to get in and out, but the accessibility of interacting with the product. Seating. If you want to increase dwell time, have different levels of seating, right? If you have hard bench, they might stay 2 minutes. If you have comfortable chair, they might stay 3 or 4, depending on what's happening in the booth. Your staff behaviors are going to make a huge, huge difference in their comfort. Friendly people that are looking and acting like they want to be there. They're attentive. They're quickly responsive. They're not pushy, right? They're not out grabbing people out of the aisles. They're showing respect for visitors' time and knowledge. These are things that increase comfort factor. Food and beverage. You know, you put a drink in someone's hand, coffee, tea, smoothie, whatever, they hang around a little bit. You put a food in their hand, snack, whatever, they hang around. These are comfort factor things. So here's some photographs on comfort factor. This one was killer. It was a hydration station in the middle of the booth. This tall water tower, and it had fruit, lemon and watermelon and cucumber, and you could and they also had different experiences around the booth. Here's a simple example of charging station with seating. Everybody's got smartphones. Those phones are going dead about halfway through the day. Having a little space in your booth, a place to charge and a place to sit and get off your feet for a few minutes and talk with somebody. Here's an example of using unique but comfortable seating. Look at this, round balls. The guy's doing a presentation to 3 people. They're happy to get off their feet for about 4 minutes and listen to his presentation. So what are you doing to improve the comfort factor of attendees in your booth? The 6 things that will really impact, do they remember and recall the experience in your booth? Number 1, they had a direct interest in the product. That is number 1. The company name, it's familiar, it's memorable. There was a physical demonstration, something to do in the booth. There was a live presentation where maybe you had a small presentation, a presenter doing small one-to-many or one-to-ones. Your booth staff, you had the right people, enough of the right people, and they were doing the right things, and then the overall design and color and imagery of your booth. And final point on staffing, some things to avoid. 3 pictures on a screen here. The guy at the top, I was at a show doing evaluation. He's sleeping. I'm standing there and I'm doing, and I hear somebody snore. Not only is he sleeping, everything that could be wrong with a booth is wrong with that top booth. He's behind a table, he's sitting down, he's sleeping, he's got all this crap laid out. I ain't stopping. Look in the bottom left. This guy thinks that his booth space is his office. He's working on his computer while his colleague is sitting there texting. You gonna walk into that booth? I'm not. I'm not walking into either of those. Look at this third example, bottom right with the green shirts. A 10 by 10 booth, nothing in the booth except 5 people wearing bright green shirts. You gonna stop in that booth? I'm not stopping in that booth, right? Nothing to do. Kind of intimidating. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, and yet I feel like we've kind of just scratched the surface. So I'm going to open this up for questions, and while I do, I'm going to pass it back to Taylor for any closing thoughts or comments from ABC. Taylor?
Well, again, we just want to thank everyone for tuning in today. We hope you found this very informative. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact your account manager or even Jefferson. There is a link on that Success Center page where you can email him directly for any further questions and whatnot. And again, thank you for tuning in.
All right, thanks, Taylor. I got a bunch of questions, so I'm going to attack these right now and stand by. I don't know if any are show specific yet. Question number 1 is, how can I see the pictures you're showing? We're going to record this and put it up on the Exhibitor Success and ROI Center. Second, the question, are there any companies you would recommend that could help create a booth? Oh, yeah, there are a bunch of companies. I don't promote any specific company, but I would go on Google and I would go exhibit design, exhibit designers near me. A bunch of them will come up that can create, nowadays with fabric and aluminum, there's exhibit designers and builders are everywhere. There's hundreds and hundreds. Someone's asking, is a 20 by 20 worth it, and should I spend it? I tell you what, if you have the budget, I think a 20 by 20 is the optimum booth size. You can work magic in a 20 by 20 space. It is definitely worth it, but you got to design it right? You got to make sure you're using all these principles we talked about. 20 by 20 is totally worth the investment if you design it right. Buy versus rent. It depends. Nowadays, there's a lot of cost savings with renting your booth in terms of shipping, drayage, installation and dismantle, storage, upgrading and upkeep. And so renting is a very, very strong way to go today. And I would suggest when you talk with an exhibit house that you consider both kind of angles. Should I rent? Should I buy? Next question. Does location matter as much as the quality of the booth? Or is it worth it to have a corner booth? One of the advantages of a corner booth is when you're in the inline booth, you only have one point of entry. When you're on a corner booth, you have 2. If you're on a peninsula, you have 3 sides. If you're on that 20 by 20 island, you have 4 sides. So, yes, anytime I had the chance to get a corner or a peninsula or an island, I would definitely be going that way, for sure. What can we do outside of our booth to drive traffic there? Well, the first thing you got to do is pre-show marketing, okay? You cannot just rent space and show up and hope that people find you, okay? So you want to make sure that you're putting together a pre-show marketing. And on the Exhibitor Success and ROI Center, we've got a webinar replay up there called Driving Qualified Booth Traffic. I would strongly suggest that you go view that. It'll walk you through how to put together a targeted campaign to get the right people to the show and to your booth. And also talk with Taylor and the team at ABC about the different marketing opportunities pre and at the show that can help get you visibility, okay, around outside of your booth. Okay, so pre-show market, talk to the ABC team, take advantage of exhibitor marketing ops. Let me see. Wow, a lot of questions. Awesome. What's the most important thing a first-time exhibitor should bring besides products? Well, this webinar hit it. A well-designed booth would be one. A good booth staff who really understands how to work trade shows, is excited about your products, will really work the show. So I would say besides your products, a well-designed booth, a good booth staff who's really understands shows and is excited about your products. Those would be 2 additional things I would definitely bring. Let's see. Someone, first show, I'm traveling by myself. I want to do this light. How can I have a nice booth and make it portable? Nowadays, with fabric, the ability to have portability. In fact, there's even blow-up booths now. At Exhibitor Show, I saw a booth that is literally like it's not circular like a balloon, but it's a blow-up booth. It literally shrinks down and fits into your suitcase. You put an air pump on it, and boom, there goes your exhibit. So there's a lot of options in portability. Fabric today with fabric and aluminum extrusions, the ability to have a real lightweight aluminum frame and stretch fabric over it, another way to go. So a lot of options in lightweight, quick setup, easy tear down, portable, carry with you. Next question, how many booth staff should we have in a 20 by 20? The staffing rule of thumb is 50 square feet per booth staffer. So if you're in a 10 by 10, you have the space for 2 booth staff, maybe 3. In a 20 by 20, depending upon how much exhibit property, how much furnishings, how much product displays, you might have in the 4 to 8 range in a 20 by 20, 4 to 8. And again, that depends on how much stuff you have in the booth. You don't want too many staff because then it's a intimidating place to go into. All right, it looks like we're out of time, and it looks like we're out of questions too. I want to thank everybody for logging in, taking your time. Let today be a beginning, not an end. With Taylor and Larry and the entire team at ABC, you've got a great group over there that will help you succeed. You've got this Exhibitor Success and ROI Center that's loaded with content. So make sure that you visit, bookmark, and share. And feel free to submit questions after the webinar through the Exhibitor Success and ROI Center. And on behalf of everyone at ABC Kids Expo, my company here, Competitive Edge, I want to thank you for logging in. Thank you for being an exhibitor. Use something from what you learned here today, and you will be on your way to a more productive and profitable exhibiting experience. Thanks for logging in, everybody. We'll see you on the next webinar, August 23rd, where we go inside the exhibiting numbers. Have a great day.